how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't lie!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
For this episode, I sit down and chat with Christopher Fitzgerald. Christopher has an extensive theatrical career, and he is incredibly willing to share all of the steps and all of the lessons he's learned that have brought him to his current place today in Broadway and theater in general. And it's a wonderful, wonderful conversation with many, many takeaways that I think all of us can benefit from. I was, at the end of this conversation, I was really flabbergasted at how much training actually has gone into his career. And it shows, it really shows. And it's really, really wonderful to have him share different moments and lessons along the way that he has learned from. So I hope you learned something from this episode and enjoy. We're back. I'm Clayton Howe, and today with me is Christopher Fitzgerald. Christopher, thank you for joining me today.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here in the Open Jar Studios.
Yes, Open Jar Studios.
Which are new, right?
Brand spanking.
Yeah.
This
it smells new.
June 17th opening night for them here. So this is like, it smells new.
And it's like we can see out into the city.
We're right here.
It just feels like a really exciting place to work on stuff.
It is. Have you seen the bigger rooms?
No. Are they massive?
Yeah. Mezzanine. There's like a mezzanine in one of them.
That's great.
It's insane.
All right. We'll probably be in here doing something at some point.
In the very near future.
Just sweating and
oh yeah,
in a panic.
As you do in theater.
As you do.
I want to take it back to the beginning of time.
Okay.
For Christopher Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Growing up.
When I was just a mere zygote.
Yes, exactly.
Just a little tiny ball of cells.
But and I want to say that was in Maine, but that wasn't. Did you move when you were? Was there moving when you were a kid? Were you born elsewhere?
I was born in Pennsylvania, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, where my mom's family lived, and my dad was an Air Force pilot in Vietnam, and he was a B-52 captain and was stationed at Loring Air Force Base in Loring, Maine.
Okay.
And so my parents were college sweethearts, and so shortly after college, he started to serve, and then that's when my mom and I was born while he was overseas.
Wow.
And the story is that he got a telegram saying, congratulations, Captain Fitzgerald, you're a father, and like mother and baby are doing well. So he didn't know if I was a boy or a girl for, I guess, like 14 hours or something, you know. That's the tale. So then that's when, so after I was born, my mom moved up to the Air Force Base up in Loring, Maine. And when I say Loring, it's like, it is so far, it's like 6 hours from Portland, which is like the big city. I mean, it's way, way up northeast in Maine, in the middle of Evergreens, in the middle of nowhere, really. And so after he finished his service, they moved down to Portland, which is the big city in Maine. And that's where I grew up.
And were you, at what age did you decide to go into any form of entertainment?
Remember when I was saying the little ball of cells?
Yes.
That's kind of, at that moment, I was like, I think I gotta perform. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I think it's one of, another part of my story is my parents then divorced soon after, and I lived with my mom, who was a single mom now for a number of years in Portland, this city that was fresh to her, and I think at that point, I don't know what was going on just chemically inside my brain. Probably a combination of ADHD and a variety of things that led me to kind of this need to kind of entertain or make mom laugh. I don't even know, probably had to do with kind of the general feeling in the home of let's keep things light. And to this day, my mom and, we make each other laugh. And I can make her laugh for hours. And it's one of my great joys. I love making my mom laugh. Oh, okay. So that's kind of where that kind of nugget of just like need to kind of entertain or make people laugh or some kind of out of that is where that grew. And then I don't know if it was ever a decision. I was never, I think a lot of times when people who do this, it's not like you have this kind of intellectual kind of discussion in your mind, like, should I get on stage and sing this song for thousands or should I not? I just think it's kind of like, well, that's what I'm doing. I got to go do it. Yeah. And I'm going to just do it because it feels good or it makes sense somehow chemically in your body that like, I got to go do this. So that's kind of how it started. And I think some of that manifested itself in school with an inability to focus and a lot of times teachers saying, your kid is, to my mom, your kid is distracting other children. And
I got that same note.
Yeah.
From a teacher.
And so I think in a desperate attempt to save the day, she put me into, she found some outlets for me. She put me into a clown class at when I was 5 years old to just, and I still have a memory of it. And just began that whole journey of a place to put this energy, to put this kind of need.
Did you love it, or were you just like, this is great? I'm just
I think
letting it out.
I think I loved it, and I think it focused me. It gave a kind of focus to what was going on, in my body. And I still feel that today. Yeah. I still feel, something like doing Waitress when I'm playing a scene with somebody and the kind of energy of 1,000 people watching you, you can't deny that they're there. Yeah. And yet I'm here with you, my scene partner, and we're in love and we're kind of crafting this scene together that is for them and for us. There's nothing that kind of helps me kind of feel as focused and jazzed and energized as that moment. Yeah. It's very strange. I don't know, it's kind of a bizarre need, but that's what it is. And it's so satisfying to tell a story and to be in the story as you're telling it. Yeah. Some people like to write stories. And I believe when they write stories, they're kind of in the story as well. Of course. They're kind of, that's what we desire. Yeah. Is to kind of, that focus.
Yeah. Well, because and we're talking to each other right now and it's so focused as we're speaking to each other right now, but and obviously you at 5 is different than you now, is just channeling all of that energy into the right thing that your mind wants to focus on. Yeah. Because you can be incredibly focused and still, make people laugh and do the whole. Were you, was there a thought between, theater, improv, going to Chicago, going to LA, going to New York, was there any or you were just kind of on the path and it?
I think for me, my upbringing and what kind of led me forward was, I had a real support system in my mom, and then my stepdad, who came along when I was, I think, around 6 or 7. He came into my life, and he's an amazing human being. And I think their awareness that this was something that I needed to do, and kind of helped push me in. Not push me, but kind of create roads, paths to these experiences. Really helped. Yeah. And then I again, I don't, for me, it was never I have this kind of meta dream of what is to come or what I'm going to do. I've always been about like what I'm doing right now is the thing that I am kind of most jazzed about or thinking about. And so it was just a variety of shit. It was a variety of stuff. It was like I did a lot of community theater, which I loved. I did Oliver at age 8 at the Portland Players, which was a huge, like, oh my God, this is, and to this day, there's a story of like, I had a little bowler hat and I was little. I mean, I was like, a foot tall and with my little bowler hat, and I was cute. I was just like doing my little thing. I was like, and like the reviews came out and they were like, the show is great, but like this little kid in the bowler hat, this kid is like insane and he's hilarious. And this is the adage, never do a show with children or animals because everyone will watch them children or something like that. And so here I was just doing my thing, and I remember the guy playing Fagin like pulled me aside backstage and was just like, stop upstaging me. You stay still when I'm singing my song, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember kind of being like, nervous, confused, like, but people love what I'm doing. And like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe, and then kind of going, we'll see.
and here we are.
And then the next day, just like,
What was the transition for you then down to New York? Was there
so just really quickly, it was like, so then I did that. Then I started a little a cappella group in high school.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while with these two great friends who I'm going to see actually next week. Amazing. And that was really fun because it was like it was a little trio, and we were really theatrical, and it was like singing because I loved to sing. It was like finding people that also loved to sing, and that was really fun. Right. And then in the midst of that, I was still doing kind of semi-professional stuff in Maine and all that. And then through all of that, I had this whole like new vaudeville thing that I started to do where I was working with all these amazing performers that were in New England at the time, like storytellers and jugglers and clowns, kind of modern day clowns, more Bill Irwin clown, less red-nosed Waka Waka clown. Yeah. And I was writing stuff with them, and they were my mentors, and I was like traveling around. It was like crazy. Yeah. And so so it's like I'm doing a cappella stuff. And then the a cappella guys kind of got into that world, and we started kind of performing at these vaudeville shows with some of these people. And I mean, it sounds like another world, but it was at that time in the kind of, mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there was this whole revival of this kind of way of working that people were really into. Led by this guy named Benny Reel, who was like, in Maine, was this kind of, he was a figurehead of this revival of this ancient, it's not ancient, but this older art form of vaudeville. And so it was really cool.
Wow.
And so, and then it was like, so then still doing that.
All right.
Then I go to college, I basically like applied to try to get scholarships. I went to this college, Rollins College in Florida, and basically based on the fact that it had a really nice brochure.
Nice weather.
And really nice weather. And, they had a really great scholarship for theater students, which didn't exist at that time, but they were like, it was like a really substantial bit of money because you had to perform in their shows professionally. So, I mean, there's so much. I could just go on. But then I went that, and then that began a whole other journey where some of the professors there were amazing and started kind of clicking me into another way of thinking in terms of becoming an actor, less a performer.
Right.
I went to Williamstown Theater Festival by a recommendation from one of my professors.
I saw that.
Yeah. I have the sweatshirt on today. Yeah. And that began a whole, then I went for a summer there, worked with professionals and made a whole other community of friends and people that were in New York and began that whole thing. And then,
there's so much, which is incredible. Yeah. You had a substantial amount of working prior to college. and like, professional work.
Yes.
So you had learned a lot at that point. And I'm curious from there through, the Williamstown, what are you learning about work ethic? Are there things that are coming up, or you're just doing? There's really no.
Absolutely. You're like professors, I think at college is where I really started to understand kind of the process of rehearsal, and what is expected kind of an actor in that process. So I started kind of piecing that together. But Williamstown was a huge eye-opener because it was the first time I had spent a whole summer watching this theater festival produce 10 professional shows. Quickly. And I got in the first show, The Mad Woman of Chaillot. Yeah. And they had these auditions, and they were like, we need a street singer. Can anyone here play an instrument? And one guy, I think, was like, I can play a guitar. And they were like, it's like it's like a French play. Is there any other instrument? Can anyone play the concertina? That little like.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I play it. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah, I don't have one, but if you can get me one, I've played it before. Totally lying. And so I kind of, and so they gave, then they, of course, they found this thing, gave it to me, and I was like, oh my God, I have to learn this shit. And I was up one night, all night, just trying to learn this thing. And I come into rehearsal, and I'm trying to sing this song, and I'll never forget Bill Duff Griffin, who has passed away, but he's an amazing professional actor at that time, was like, he's singing too loud. He's singing in my ear, Tom, who was the director, Tom Moore. It was Catherine Hellman was in the show, and all these, Elizabeth Franz, all these amazing people. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know, I'm just like this little peon. 19-year-old, goober, just trying to like sing, and so it was like all those little lessons along the way kind of start to build your foundation for how you work, how you expect other people to work, and what's important to you. So that's kind of,
wow.
Just watching people in a professional rehearsal was the thing that I think kind of, changed me.
Yeah. Now, okay, so then you're here in the city and you're working on, there's a lot in there. Is the next thing Corpus Christi?
No.
That wasn't the next thing.
No, the next thing was grad school.
Right.
In San Francisco. So I went 2 years out to San Francisco, and then I went to grad school, and that was a whole other ball of wax where it's like now you're actually starting to kind of really break apart the kind of conventions of being a performer and like shining to becoming an actor, to becoming someone who tells stories and does material less about kind of showing stuff, but being and learning a whole other slew of lessons that were painful to learn and challenging and eye-opening and inspiring. So that began that. So it's like this kind of weird combination of performer Chris battling into this like, wait, there's this whole other side to what this whole thing is that I don't really know as much about. And so I began to kind of craft that part of myself and become much more interested in exploring that part. And so with those two things, that's when I moved to New York, and then began. And the first play I did here was The Cripple of Inishmaan at the Public Theater with, and that, all the while I had been returning to Williamstown over the summers, doing non-X summers, and still working with all these, incredible people.
Wow. I was, when you were talking about the grad school, I was like getting chills that we can actually capture how much training and learning you've done that leads up to like someone seeing you as Ogie and Waitress. Because when you see the show, it's like, oh, that's funny. He's fun. But there's so much training that has not necessarily gone into it, but gone into, just that alone and all the other performances. And I just
Ogie
love
is
that
a good
word.
example for me of trying to kind of bring both worlds into the room to work that way. Ogie on paper is here, it can be just this kind of silly, over the top, absurd kind of way of playing it, and what I was interested in was a way of really making that story really mean something and to really mean it. And that, as opposed to kind of giving it the musical theater kind of half meaning it, kind of playing at it, I really connected to him as this real person. And so using some of that training and having the humor come out of from like that deeper place is far more interesting to me. And you have to be really judicious. You have to be really, it's all about your taste too, in terms of how you craft a comedic material, and that to me is something that I've worked really hard and care very much about. That when I'm doing something that's funny, that it's organic to really what's going on and not just this kind of extra, bullshit that's just like a little wink and a nod to know that the audience will laugh at some kind of random stupid thing. Mm-hmm. I like that the humor comes from the circumstances and from the reality that has been kind of painfully explored and earned.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way that came about. That's I think why it's so fun to go back and do, because it's like I can just pop in and it's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there for the playing of it from your guts,
Yeah, because of course there are some choreographed bits that are funny, but there's also just living in it, which make it funny, because you'll just do something slightly different every night.
But like those choreographed bits, like which one do you have one in your mind?
The table, isn't there the leg over the table? Yeah, I don't know if that was
again, that was one that was early, and then I was like,
nah.
What am I doing? I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I cut that out.
And you're just, oh, this is interesting. So then now going into your process then, are you, obviously you get the script, you memorize it, you think about it. Are there's things that you come up with and you try them and you switch them out?
It really depends on the director, the material, and the process by how I personally approach something or feel what is going to be the most effective in terms of my contribution. So something like Waitress, my relationship with Diane, the director, we both early on, she's really open to ideas. She really desires them. And that's, to me, that's really fun and exciting. And so I took it upon myself to kind of bring in as many ideas as I could to try. And she was always like, let's try this, let's try that. Show me what you got. That was basically the process. And then from there, it was kind of carving it out after throwing out a bunch of ideas. And then there's other processes that you get into where it's not as much that. Something like Susan Stroman in Young Frankenstein. Yeah. She's, we got to doing a number between Igor and Dr. Frankenstein are together again for the first time. That number, but she choreographed that, and she then had us learn it and bring all of our juice and all of ourselves to what she had crafted, which was brilliant. And that's what she does, right. And so that was, you do that. But something like Waitress had the story of the song was more delicate and had a lot more things that I felt like needed to happen and to make it make sense and to really make it soar. Right. It's a little bit of a weird song. It's a little stocky. It's a little strange. Yeah. How are we going to justify that? This guy is going to continue to say, I'm never leaving you, and I'm going to stay right here, and I'm pursuing you. How do we do that in a way that's charming, that we believe that at any moment she could be like, you know what, stop, and he would be like, absolutely, goodbye, my dear. That
still lovable.
It's non-threatening, and that it's a real celebration of love as opposed to a guy actually pursuing her. Yeah. And that's why all those ideas of an image I had was like birds, mating birds. I saw some documentary where they, these little kind of ugly little birds come out, and when they want to like impress the girl, they're like, and they have this big giant red like woohoo, and they do like a like a little dance, to try to like impress the. And that's Ogie. It's just like I'm gonna throw up this huge thing and check it out.
Yeah.
See who I am. This is all of me. In reality, he's just a little funny little bird, but like he has no shame. I'm gonna clog for you. I'm gonna sing opera. I'm gonna do all these things. So all that came out of that kind of organic, like desire to like share himself and share the best of himself for her.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to like figure out those things that help illuminate characters. So in that process, that's what that was. It was like it was a real collaborative experience that way.
And that's how we met. It was super collaborative. And I remember Andrea chatting with, like each of the people that were brought onto the project. We did the table read, and you had the script and you were doing like the essence of the lines, but you were making it so much of like,
oh no,
it was no, but it was good. No, it was great. I mean, it seemed like it was all, I was just in the corner, but it seemed like it was like, oh my God, I was entertained.
Yeah.
And that's so much fun that you can bring that collaborative nature to everything, depending on the process. Of course.
I mean, it's always that. I mean, that's really that's the secret to the success of it, because you really can't do it alone.
Yeah. But also having the awareness to realize when not to chime in with something.
That's a really hard. That's a thing that always is a balance. Is how is learning a room, understanding a room, learning how to advocate for yourself, how to not deny your gut and your taste, knowing when to kind of like demand something, knowing when to kind of let something go for a while.
How are you deciding that? Is that in a gut feeling?
It's all your gut. That's all your gut, and you're kind of
like, let it go. I should stand up
and
for
having
this.
faith that what your gut is telling you is leading you in the right direction. There's absolutely, and that's just comes with experience, I think.
Of course. That's cultivated.
Yeah. To know you have an idea that is going to work, or is worth exploring, and then telling a room of Broadway creatives as you're crafting a Broadway show, I want to try this because I believe in it.
Yeah.
Is a bold, scary, exciting prospect. Mm-hmm. But you have to that to me, I have to be in that place where I'm not really enjoying myself, or I'm not really doing the work. And so something like, I had this notion after I finished the number in Waitress, we were doing a run through. So this is a later part of the process. We were doing a run through, and I ran through the number and it ended, and I found myself a little winded, and it just popped into my soul. I was like, oh, if I hit an inhaler right now, it would be perfect. It would be perfect, because it's this sense of like, you're setting up an expectation that like he has delivered his message in all its glory, and then kind of dropping all of that briefly just to be like, I gotta suck air for a second. Was funny to me. It's funny. So
and so lovable,
and so lovable, and so just like I was like, I gotta find an inhaler for the next time we do this. And I think I said to Diane, I was like, I'm going to do a little something at the end. Don't be, let me know what you think.
Yeah.
It's just a little something, and it was, and I selfishly, I was like, I'm going to save this for the next run through so that I can do it and have people experience it for the first time. So I can kind of know if it's an idea worth keeping or if it's not. But I don't want to tell everybody about it
Yeah.
But so it's like this kind of weird negotiation with yourself, with people that you're working with, like how to navigate, expressing ideas and trying them.
I love hearing you say this aloud because I'm going through this, as I learn, and you're so right. You come up with ideas in the moment. You just do because you're living in it. And then you're like, oh, is that worth it? Should I change that? I'm changing the blocking. That changes the prop master's list. There's like a whole trickle down for one thing that happens on stage. And it's like, is it really worth it?
Sure.
And having to, toil in that inside is so, wow.
Yeah. But I think for me, it almost gets to this feeling. I feel like when I'm in a rehearsal and eyes are on me and we're all like, there's,
we're going.
30 people, all kind of, all the patrons of the diner and all the creatives, and everyone's kind of like, we're in the midst of the rehearsal. Like this is the time to do this. And that focus that it forces me to have, that pressure almost kind of ignites my energy that, all right, and I'm kind of, it's like my receptors start opening and I'm just kind of like, what is happening? And I'm trying to listen to what my scene partner might say, or ride on what she's offering, or, nothing better than when you're with other actors that you also kind of share your sensibility, that come up and they're like, dude, what if you hit an inhaler at the end? Or I saw you doing that little dance earlier and you have to do it. It's hilarious. Like, all right, I'll try it. Like
encouragement.
Just like kind of taking all of it and just, I try to make it fun. I try to make rehearsal in a comedy just like fun for myself.
Of course.
It's got to be, it's like, it's a weird thing. It's like, it's a selfish pursuit of a kind of self-satisfaction, but it's not an ugly self-satisfaction. It's like a kind of, it's joy. It's like it's not happiness. It's different. It's joy. It's actual real joy. And when people are experiencing real joy, my friend David Costabile and I have talked about this. Something else is happening. Something you are like destined to watch and to see. And I don't mean joy in joy can be in a tragic scene. It can be in all sorts of, it can manifest itself in many different ways.
All of it,
but it's real. So when you're watching someone do like a comedy and it's not quite clicking and they're kind of like, dancing around it or kind of playing at it, oftentimes I'm like, I don't think that person's having any fun right now for themselves.
Yeah.
Like real fun doing what they're doing. And they've got to, you got to get in touch with that. However you find that. And that is irresistible. And it will always lead you to interesting things.
Have you ever experienced not having that joy and then working through it to get to it?
Constantly. That's the battle.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's challenging, is to allow yourself to go there, to trust yourself to go there, especially when stakes are high and you're
stakes are very high here.
You just of course I'm always doing that, and I'm not saying it's like it's always successful. I just know for myself that when I'm in that place, in that kind of the unknown of what's happening, if I go to that place, if I allow myself to do that, to go to find my kind of joy center, that's where all my discoveries are made.
Now, are you doing that on the spot? You're in the rehearsal studio, you're not feeling joy, it's not coming to you, or is that something you take home, you discuss it, you journal about it, work on it?
All of those things, I think about it a lot.
Okay.
I have little moments where I'm daydreaming that like an idea will come, and that kind of that sparks something. And it's interesting, like it happens in television too. I just finished doing like the second season of the show Happy that I'm on. I play a world famous children's performer who is the bad guy who murders and kills people and is a psychopath, and it's funny.
Yeah. Hilarious.
But there's another example of like, if there's ever a thing where you have to kind of show up each day and find that place, it's on television or in film, because the camera knows instantly whether you're in it or not in it.
Oh yeah.
And so all of those little tricks are happening, but you're actually making it in the moment. You're not even kind of rehearsing it so you can repeat it.
Yeah.
You're actually trying to find it right now, right in the moment that we're doing it. And that can also be really thrilling and exciting. But you also have to have the courage to come in to shoot a scene and to say, okay, let me help. What makes sense to me? I'm going to try to receive as much information as I can to kind of help me get to a place where I can feel like I can find a little joy in what I'm doing here.
Right.
That's kind of what I do for myself. And it was really fun and really crazy.
And that takes self-confidence. A lot of self-confidence, no?
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have it in like almost no other part of my life.
Well, there it is.
There it is.
No, that's so, well, it's true. It's so interesting that, even because I see, like you see like, and I'm just using like a villainous character, for instance, someone who doesn't necessarily play funny. They play like I kill. And it makes more sense in my mind that they would come and be like, of course they're gonna have the self-confidence to do that. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. But to have someone who comes in and does, comedic stuff, lovable stuff, and still have inside of them the self-confidence to be like, no, I'm committing to this. Like I'm gonna take the liberty on this, and people are gonna make their own decisions, but I've made one. So that's a really interesting balance to hear you share.
Yeah.
Again, these other projects that you've worked on, I'm curious, like in regards to Wicked, what was the process there, jumping into that? How much was there, were you
Wicked
coming in
was
to
a
join it?
little bit challenging because I joined it only for its Broadway run. It had worked out of town first.
Right.
And I had just gotten married. And I had worked with Joe Mantello a couple times before, so he and I were pals, and he was at my wedding, and I was like, can I have like a honeymoon? Like, because rehearsal was starting like the Monday after I got married on a Saturday. And so he was like, all right, just come to the table read on Monday, and then you can go away for like a week and a half and have a honeymoon and then come back.
Unheard of.
I mean, absurd that I even asked, and then crazy that he let me do it.
Yeah.
It was crazy when I really think about it.
Everyone else is like, what are you doing?
I mean, look, there's a lot of things to work on in Wicked besides Bach, so I think that's, by the time I arrived a week and a half later, they still hadn't gotten out of like, the second scene. So that didn't really, that was really fun. What was really interesting about that was just watching, Kristen and Adina just at the top of their game, kind of just take that material and just let it soar. That was really cool. To watch an audience discover the show, that first night we did, I think it was our final dress or maybe our first preview, and like those first chords, bum, 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 and just hearing, 1,600 people just go out of their minds.
Lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And realizing like, oh, this is something, we're in something different here.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And I had a ball.
Yeah. Okay. Are there common pieces of like incorrect advice that you've heard or encountered within the, within, I don't know, work ethic, community, theater, life?
Well, I guess you'd have to be I'd have to find something like specific to.
I know I'm asking a very broad.
Yeah,
and I appreciate you rolling through the Rolodex. I really appreciate it.
And the thing that happens is I'm going through all the great pieces of advice I've gotten as opposed to ones that aren't good.
Well, I would love to hear the great too. So we focus on the great. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. That's funny. I mean, it makes me think of like just crazy little moments I've had along the way of almost like having to get back to that little secret that you have, that each one of us has.
Yeah.
And what happens in that moment when that kind of secret is threatened, either by a director or in an audition, which it's constantly threatened, your little belief.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be in there if you didn't believe that you can do it, really, or you're trying to believe you can do it. And so it just, I was auditioning for a play early on where I don't want to say the name of the play.
You don't have to.
Because the playwright was there.
You don't have
but
to.
But it was a kind of a pipsacaka little play, and it was out of town. And I remember auditioning, coming in, and I walked in. No one said anything to me, and I was standing there forever, and they were all talking, and no one acknowledged that I was standing there forever. And finally, the playwright goes, "You can start anytime," and I was like, "Okay." And he went, "Well, do you have any, questions?" And I said, "No. Do you have any questions?" Or he goes, "Do you have any questions or comments?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Do you have any questions?" And I said to him, "Do you have any questions or anything to say before I start?" Because they hadn't said anything. And he goes, "Yeah, don't suck."
Oh,
and I went,
come on.
And I went, "Well, that will be impossible with this material." And he went, "Oh." And I walked out, and I was like, I felt like empowered. I felt, but I also was like, what did I just do? Well, this is insane. Like but it was right there. I was just like, fuck you, man.
Yeah.
This is too hard. This is too hard to be exposed this way and to be treated that way. I mean, I think, to me, the civility of auditions, I wish were, in general, just better.
Held to a higher standard.
Yeah. And, it's interesting.
I've heard that before. Sorry,
I'm sure.
What is it?
Like my wife is now a director and has been, for the last, 7-8 years. And I've watched her, audition hundreds of people. And I feel like, because she was an actor for so long, she just runs like the best auditions. And
how?
And because
Why?
she says to me, someone can come in and start reading a scene, and someone can come in before they start reading the scene, and your gut as a director is like, yeah, this is not the right fit. This is not the right person for this particular part. That's just, and that happens all the time to all of us.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
We walk in, we utter a word, and it's like, yeah, that's not even close to what we're looking for. But it has no bearing on whether you're good or whether you're talented or whether you have something to offer. It really doesn't. It's just, that's just not the right fit.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that information as a director? Oftentimes they just kind of tune out.
Yeah.
No, this is a waste of my time. Especially when you get up high and, they don't have a lot of time to kind of,
sit there and
coddle
hold your hand.
you through the experience of being like, yeah, dude, you're not it. I just wish sometimes if you walk in and you're not it, I wish they would just go like, you know what? You're not it. I would love that.
Like, great, I'll take that back and have a day.
Let me just go home. Don't make me. But if we're going to have this experience together, that's what she's like, all right, she's like, there's always something to kind of, for me to gain by working with somebody in that brief moment.
Of course.
If I'm open to it. And so the person will read the scene, and then she always gives an adjustment. Yeah. She's always like, let's try it again, and like, blah, 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 whatever. Even if the adjustment is just do it again, just to like, because, there's always the weird thing of like, we're in a room together and you're like performing a scene or reading, like, now you've had one pass at it. Let's just like breathe and like just do it again.
Yeah.
And she always has something positive to say about the human being that is the one exposing themselves in that moment, emotionally and vulnerably.
Yeah.
And I feel like people walk out of our auditions and they always feel great.
Like they were seen.
Yeah. And that's
Truly
all we
seen.
really want, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, we know we're not going to get most of the jobs, but like that, what happens to you in that day that you have a good audition as opposed to a shitty one is it changes your paradigm of how you feel about yourself and about what you're doing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It like literally changes
Yeah.
how you feel. So I wish the responsibility, I wish people in those positions would be more open to having that human
Connection.
and human exchange, but they're not. So you have to kind of figure that out for yourself.
Yeah.
And again, that's where the joy comes in.
Yeah.
And that's where like I get to a point where I like to, in particular auditions, like really do something that surprises myself, and that's why sometimes I don't learn my lines. Like, I mean, I learn my lines, but I'm not like, I don't obsessively work over material. I really don't. I try to just kind of get a good kind of understanding of what it's going on, and I just try to get it in my brain, and then I just go in and I see what happens, as opposed to trying to go in and make something happen, because I don't know what's going to happen in terms of what that room's going to be like, the people, their energy, all of it.
Yeah.
So it's like I like to kind of surprise myself, and I like accidents. I like things that are strange that happen. I try to build those into my shows that in Waitress.
Yeah.
Like I did a little bit where Ogie bangs into a table when I'm leaving, and I just like let that just kind of, I hope something falls from the table so that I can deal with it. So something can happen. Something real can happen. I love accidents. I love when things fall over, and I like when emotionally something comes up in me that surprises me that I don't quite know where I am.
Have you ever been thrown on stage by something happening that's not supposed to happen? Or have you always been so present, like where it's like your belt comes undone or something falls or you trip or...
Oh, I mean,
I'm just curious because it's like,
Of course I've been thrown by things and like, I'm in another realm. I mean, I had an experience where I stretched right before I entered as Ogie, and I would come in on a little pallet on a table, sitting at a table. And about 20 seconds before my entrance, I'm stretching backstage, and I come down into a squat, and I'm not kidding, an explosion happened in my derriere. Like, and my ass came completely out of my pants. It tore... The back seam of my pants tore so aggressively. It was like about maybe a 9-inch tear that my whole ass came out of my pants. Literally, now we're at 15 seconds.
Yeah.
The music is starting that is going to bring me on.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in utter panic. Drew Gehling goes, "Second act pants! Second act pants!" And someone throws my second act pants from, like, my dressing room was the floor up.
Yeah.
I throw on my pants. I literally I'm buckling
seconds.
them as I'm coming out. So now I'm sweating, and now I have to sit for a minute as the kind of scene kind of progresses.
Yeah.
And my awareness of what had just happened, the idea that I couldn't talk to anybody about it,
Yeah.
the idea that no one on stage knew what had just happened to me, made me like I could not get through the scene. I was laughing like internally and externally, and I had these like completely different colored pants on that were like a totally different thing. So people were kind of like, what is it? I wonder why he's wearing those. It made me laugh. I just could not handle it. It was insane.
God. But it's getting back to that focus and having the focus to actually get through it.
Or not. I mean, I barely got through it.
Oh my God.
I almost had to do like Ogie with ass out.
That's Ogie with ass out. As we wrap up here, I have a few questions left. I'm curious, going back to the beginning, like growing up,
What did your mother, or what have you learned about, what did she teach you about kindness? Or what have you learned about kindness?
The adage that my mom always said to me when I was growing up was "be yourself," and I think from that, I think being just real with people is and being as close to your truest self is kind of where it begins. But I don't know. I haven't thought a lot about like what kind. And it's a great question, and it's just fun to kind of ponder. I have 2 kids, and I watch as they craft their own relationships with friends and their own relationships with each other. And so much of what goes on in my sphere and in my house is us really, really understanding and having empathy for other people's experience. And I think that to me is kindness, is understanding and putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
It just opens, it frees you from so much judgment and so much misunderstanding when you can breathe and really understand that there's another person that is having an experience that is right in front of you. So really listening. I think listening is kindness too. Yeah. Really hearing what people are saying, Yeah. So
no, I love that. It's true. Yeah, I've never thought of listening as kindness, but it definitely is.
Yeah.
Actually hearing what someone's saying is, yeah, okay, and it's like, yeah, no, I hear it.
And there's, I think people have always, you've heard the adage like hearing isn't listening, or but really listening to what someone has to say. And it happens all the time in my house. I have 2 boys that are 10 and 12, and there's any number of things going on, but really when they get down to it, if they are having a conflict, or if they're having or even if they're having fun, it's like when I watch them really kind of take each other in, and really allow for their siblings' experience to be what it is, and to hear what they're coming from. Yeah. I mean, just so much more connection happens, and so much more like conflict. It resolves itself in such a different kind of way. It's like amazing, and now they just do it on their own.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's great. I mean, I have nothing to add to that. That's a great answer.
That's the goal, I guess. It's not always easy to listen to the person that shoved you on the subway.
Oh, it's difficult.
Of course.
But if you can, that's the rub. That's the trick. Do you have a favorite failure, or parent failure, or a project that didn't work out that led to something different or better or great, or anything that?
I mean,
where to begin?
That is, I mean, if there's like a philosophy, it's like, and my agent said this one time. My agent Gary Gersh, who has been a dear friend of mine for years. He's like, the whole thing comes sideways. The whole thing is sideways. Huh. And what he meant by that, and I completely agree, is that I have found that nothing is really linear in this pursuit of what we're all doing here. This job doesn't necessarily lead to this. It leads to this. It leads to this. There's no kind of real, nothing you can hang your hat on that has the kind of linear forward thing that makes sense. None of it makes any kind of sense. To me, it's about just being like available, working through and being available in the tough times and in the great times. You know, it's like trying to really. I try to really stay not too high, not too low, as best I can, because you know. So an example would be, I did Barnum in Chichester, England. That was produced by Cameron McIntosh. It was a huge, huge deal for him and for them. And like they came over here. I met with them over here. They flew me to London for some auditions, and then I flown over there with my whole family, and it was going to go to the West End. It was this really big deal.
Yeah.
This production. I learned to walk a tightrope. That's a whole other. We could have a whole podcast on just that. And I learned all these circus skills and did all this, you know, worked my ass off. I mean, I worked so hard on this thing, and it was this big budget crazy thing, and the whole thing, it was in a big giant Cirque du Soleil tent, and you know, thousands of people all came.
Oh my God.
And it opened and it fizzled, man. The whole thing just kind of was a big fart, and it was tough. My family had come over.
Damn.
My wife hadn't worked in a while because she had been working with our kids and kind of making this transition into directing. Not she hadn't worked, but like we didn't really have a lot of money at that point. Right, so it was like, oh man, this is
kind of need this.
Yeah, and like you know,
help.
and to have this whole thing just kind of collapse, and like the reviews came out, and it wasn't like I got terrible reviews, but it was just kind of like, you know, he doesn't have a lot of charisma. He's not quite as good as Michael Crawford was back in the day when, you know, he did his legendary performance of this part, and it just kind of I got stung, and it just kind of, the whole thing ended, and it, like, by the end of it, they were like, we're not moving to the West End, and this whole thing is just over. You know, this exposure of you playing the title role in this show is kind of over, and you're going back to New York with your tail between your legs.
Yeah.
So I come back to the city, and I'm like, I gotta get a job, and I'm like freaking out a little bit, and you know, it was expensive to be over there. And with 2 kids especially. And so I come back and I get a call from Barry Weissler, who's like, hey, I just want to meet with you. I saw Barnum. I loved it. I loved you in it. And I want to meet with you. I want to talk about some things we could maybe do together. So I was like, okay, great. So I take this meeting, and we have this really lovely meeting, and we're talking about some ideas, and I'm kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if that makes sense to me. And he's telling me this, you know, so 2 things he said in the meeting. He was like, well, first of all, if you ever want to go into Chicago, let me know. You know, I'd love to have you play Amos or what, you know, that would be so fun. If you'd love to do that, you know, if you want to do that, let me know. And I was like, okay, I'll let you know right now. I want to do it. And I'll start as soon as possible. So he was like, okay, well, we'll work on that. And he's like, you know, I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And I was like, okay. And as I'm walking out the door, he goes, oh, wait, one more thing. Hey, Brett, one of his associates he was like, get the DVD. And he brings in this DVD, and he's like, take a look at this Waitress thing. We're doing a reading. We got this really great composer, Sarah Bareilles. How do you say her name? Like, he didn't, you know, we're doing this reading. We're just going to read the screenplay, and she's going to sing the songs. It's in a couple of weeks. It's a tiny little part. I think it's a great part. But you should, you know, take a look. Tell me what you think. And if you want to join us for the reading, let me know. And, you know.
Here we are.
I mean, not here we are like, and
no.
now wait. But
no,
like,
no.
But that Waitress became a thing that, you know, that like was a big part of my theatrical and professional life for 4 years. Off of Barnum, that was a kind of failure, a kind of really challenging thing that he happened to see, that I happened to go into this meeting with him, that as I was walking out the door, he went, hey, take a look. And then it just kind of went from there. So it's like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You can't predict that or line that up. It's a sideways move.
You couldn't have trained for that. There's nothing you could have. Yeah.
No, I just showed up.
Yeah.
And was receptive and trying to be open to what's available. And that is forever the challenge and forever the great thing. You know, it's the whole life of beginnings and endings. Nothing but beginnings and endings constantly. Like births and deaths.
Yeah.
You know? And when a death happens, you mourn it. And you miss that, what that life was. But the wonderful thing is a new birth is coming soon. You're just not sure where and how it's going to happen. And then suddenly you're with a new group of people and you have a new piece of material and you're working on it. And, you know, then you have that experience. I don't know.
It's incredible.
I'm just blabbing.
No, this is like, but there's so much that can be learned from this. I mean, this stuff is what you're talking about right now has not been documented. And I think it's so important to reinforce that idea. The whole thing is sideways.
It really is. Nothing
great.
that's happened to me has, you know, I could go through every audition. I could go through every kind of experience of what things I've participated in. And all of them have some crazy, you know, nugget of insanity to it that don't make, that were just risks I took or accidents that happened or people happened to be, you know, Young Frankenstein was a big moment for me because it was my first big part in a show. And my wife was pregnant and was having kidney stones. And I remember being at the hospital and they asked me to come in for Dr. Frankenstein because Roger Bart was already playing Igor. So they asked me to come in for the doctor. And I was like, they're never going to cast like a little tiny, short, little funny looking dude as Dr. Frankenstein. It's just not going to happen. But, you know, I would love to work with Mel Brooks and Susan Stroman and all these, and Tom Meehan and all these amazing people. But like, so I, you know, was in the hospital room with her suffering from kidney stones while pregnant. And I'm like trying to work on this thing, but I'm also trying to care for her.
While pregnant.
And so I just literally had like, I was like, honey, I'm gonna get in a cab. I'm gonna go to the audition, and then I'm gonna come immediately back and be here. And she was like, just go get it. Just go let go. And so I was like, okay. So I get in the cab, I go in, and I sang the first song, and I was just kind of distracted and whatever. And Mel Brooks was like, are you okay? What's going on with you? And I was like, oh, and I kind of told him my story a little bit. And then he was like, here, sing the Alive song. You know, do you know that one? And I was like, I think, yeah, I've been listening to it. And I'm not kidding. I actually went crazy. I actually went like to another place. I was so invested in that creature coming alive that I was just like, eat alive. I was so kind of like vibrating the energy of what that scene required. And I finished and he was like, holy shit, that was nuts. You're great. I want you to read Igor. Can you do it right now? And I had a sweatshirt. And I put my sweatshirt hood up over my head.
Yeah.
And I read Igor with that energy, that same kind of thing. And then that's how that happened. Then they offered Roger Frankenstein and had me play Igor.
Wow.
I mean, you know, it's like it
showing up.
And the circumstances, it was just like, I don't know if I would have ever had that kind of emotional rawness and vulnerability if I wasn't going through what I was going through, and it just happened to be at that time, and he happened to be there,
and still showing up. I mean, Jesus, if you didn't go, that would
the whole thing was crazy.
Wow,
crazy. Anyway,
these stories are incredible.
Oh,
this conversation is like wow. What? Okay, so I know some. Maybe you can talk about it. Maybe you can. Is there anything coming up that you can share? Or do you have things coming up? Or the new things you want to work on? New aspects of theatrical endeavors that you're eyeing vaguely, or not so much?
Well, no, I really don't. I've been putting a lot of time into being with my family right now, especially through the summer. You know, there's a few things that are kind of cooking, potentially down the road. But no, I'm in the place right now where I'm like, you know, I'm battling the own thing inside myself where I'm just like, God, I wish I was in rehearsal, and I wish I wasn't, you know. But at the same time, I'm like, well, wait, I'm right where I need to be. I'm, you know, my partner's out of town working, and I'm being a dad, and that's also become an incredibly incredibly invaluable, huge part of my life, and the most important part of my life.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm bringing all of myself to that, and it's, it has its challenges and it has its unbelievable gifts. So
It's amazing.
yeah. So, and I think it comes sideways. So I'm just kind of open to kind of what's going to be happening. And usually what happens with my wife and I is like, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. And just got to keeping the receptors open to like what's coming.
Yeah.
And what's going on. Like, I've like kind of started working on a few projects of my own just because I was just like, I kind of want to do that. All right. I'll just put some time into that and see what happens. Like, just follow where you go, as opposed to kind of, there's just nothing will make sense. That's basically. Yeah. And I want it to make sense.
We all do.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love nothing more than just to have
sense of it all.
Have like 10 offers coming up that like fit perfectly into my life schedule and like are all,
No, maybe, yes.
We all want that, and it will never be that for me,
Wow. This is great.
Yeah, man, you're great.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I usually wrap it up here with like a billboard quote, metaphorically speaking, word or a phrase you throw on a billboard for millions of people to see. Does anything come to mind? Are there any? I mean, there's a lot. We got a few. We've already said.
I got two. Be yourself.
Yeah.
And
be yourself.
It comes sideways.
No, it's good. No, I know. That's what I was going to say. I was
something
like,
that.
That's a solid one to throw up there.
Something like that.
It's electronic. The billboard changes.
It always happens sideways. I don't know. I'm going to work on that one. I'll
workshop it.
We'll workshop it and
very good.
And show it to Peter Flynn, see what he thinks.
Yeah, show it to Christopher, this has been incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, man. It's lovely to talk to your fellow mates about this crazy thing that we're all trying to do.
Yeah, covering all of it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Christopher Fitzgerald.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.